Devlin, Untamed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Platform.
iOS, it's only sport. That's the name of the show. That's the name of this podcast. Martin Devlin, Lachlan War. It's only sport. We broadcast 1 till 4 every afternoon on the platform. You've got to download the app for that because it's not a radio station. We broadcast like a radio station, but you've got to download the app. Today, say sayonara, or could it be konnichiwa to Eddie Jones? The Wallabies are out of the World Cup, but Eddie Jones has been DMing another Instagram girlfriend in Japan before the breakup. What's all that about? We say goodbye to the Warriors season after that loss to Brisbane and hello to the new World Rugby champions. Well, after watching that match on the weekend, South Africa, it looks as though the winner could be Ireland. Of course, a couple of other topics on the table as well. We review the season up the waz and a fair bit of chat about why can't you call a goddamn forward pass? As always, we begin the show, tablets in hand. I say gather my flock. It is time for a sermon. What have we learned from the Rugby World Cup over the weekend? Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
Well, what have we learned from the weekend's Rugby World Cup? Ireland versus South Africa. If they're not the two best teams at the tournament, then they're two of the top three. But we knew that already, didn't we? What a titanic struggle that was. Confrontational, attritional, true test match rugby. The two best teams going at it. And they could also meet in the grand final. But just like Penrith and Brisbane in the NRL, we know that they're the two best teams there. Both the Saffers and the Mix look way more physical than us. That's what I fear more than anything. They are bigger, they're tougher, they just look more muscled, more powerful. Can we, the All Blacks, compete with these guys? Can we out-wrestle Khaleesi? Can we out-beast Bundy Aki? Why can't we breed here in New Zealand a couple of physical specimens like those two? Oh, that's right. Oh, we did have Bundy Aki, but we let him go, and we kept Rico. Ireland have Bundy Aki. We have ALB. Doesn't that say everything to you? And this obsession we have with playing rah-rah, super rah-rah rugby, and we're so clever and we attack from our 22 and those guys just play hard and straight. They smash through tackles, they bust the line, they look to physically impose themselves. Our guys get told to go out and express ourselves. Impose yourself or express yourself. It's test match, full contact collision rugby. Which of those do you think is a better philosophy? Having said all of what I've said, I still think after watching them play each other that we can get through the quarterfinal. We can beat Ireland. We just have to be prepared to play ugly and to win ugly. Forget the showy flash bollocks. Look at the tape of this game. That's what you have to do to win the World Cup of Rugby. Can we and will we get that pragmatic about it? Because if we don't, we're coming home early.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The Platform.
1:11. Lachlan, headlines. What do we got?
Where to start? I'll start with the Rugby World Cup. A couple of big games over the weekend. I'll focus on this morning. Australia, Wales. I thought Australia would win. I was horridly wrong. Wales running out 40-6 winners. Australia's biggest ever loss at a Rugby World Cup. Their biggest ever loss to Wales. And it pretty much means they're all but out of the tournament. The only way that they would remain alive and go through to the knockout phase is if Fiji drop one of their last two games and lose it by a lot. They play Georgia and Portugal still to go. I mean, you can crunch the numbers, use maths all you like. Australia are pretty much out of the World Cup. So Wales and Fiji will be advancing out of Pool C by the looks of things. Scotland beat Tonga earlier today as well. And, of course, over the weekend, Ireland with a good win over South Africa. In terms of the standings for the pools, France, Italy first, second in Pool A. The All Blacks sitting third. Ireland, South Africa 1 and 2 in Pool B. Scotland third. Wales, Fiji, Australia. That's 1, 2, 3 in Pool C. Pool D, which looks to be a little bit more straightforward at this stage. England on top with Samoa, Japan, Argentina, all with 1 win and 1 loss. Premier League this morning. If you're a Newcastle United fan, it was a stellar morning. If you're a Sheffield United fan, it was not a stellar morning. Newcastle winning 8-0 away from home against Sheffield. That was certainly the pick of the bunch this morning. Arsenal and Spurs drawing 2-2 in the North London derby. Liverpool beat West Ham 3-1. Brighton beating Bournemouth 3-1. Chelsea losing again, this time to Aston Villa. What does that mean for the table? Man City stay on top. Liverpool sits second. Brighton third. Tottenham fourth. Arsenal fifth. So Liverpool actually have a 1 point gap now. So they're sitting comfortably in third. You could say Man United are up to ninth. Woo! Good stuff. 3 wins and 3 defeats, no draws. Chelsea are 14th. 1 win, 2 draws, 3 losses. They are winless in their last 3 league games. Formula 1 yesterday, Max Verstappen winning again. It helped secure the Constructors' Championship for Red Bull. Though good outing for McLaren at Suzuka in Japan. Lando Norris finishing second, Oscar Piastri third. For Liam Lawson, our Kiwi driver, he finished 11th. By the sound of things, post-race, he had a bit of a crack at his team over the radio just around the middle stint of the race, affecting his chances. So to finish 11th, not too bad in the end for Liam Lawson. And again, he finishes ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. It doesn't really matter because, of course, Yuki Tsunoda is confirmed for a drive next year. Liam Lawson's still a reserve driver for Red Bull. Netball, the Silver Ferns played yesterday. They lost to what you could describe really as a second, maybe even a third-string English team, and they lost. What the hell? Anyway, Dame Noeline Taurua didn't hide her frustrations. The coach of the Silver Ferns, speaking post-match, held her hands up as her side continued to struggle this year. We can wallow about us, but also we've got to give credit to England. They've been together for 8 weeks and been in a centralised program. They showed their hunger. We just weren't good enough on the day. We're saying exactly the same things that we've been saying. Unfortunately, we're not learning. She also went on to make comments along the lines of, this is what I have. These are my players. Okay, it's not like I can pull a rabbit out of the hat. This is who we are. We've got to sort it out. Israel Adesanya has apologised after reportedly pleading guilty to drink driving today. The 34-year-old admitting to being pulled over early this year and gave a blood alcohol level of 87 milligrams per 100 millilitres of blood. I don't know how far over the limit that is, but Israel Adesanya pleading guilty to that reportedly, so it doesn't look like it's confirmed. This is on the News Hub website. And for the time being, that looks like it is what is making news, Mart.
Devlin.
Oh my goodness me!
The platform.
Chris Jones, Times online, rugbypass.com. He was there live as Wales boyos just took it to Eddie Jones and the Wallabies. The worst Australian rugby side I've ever seen. In my 45 plus years of watching international rugby, I can't even remember a rabble to the level that this lot have sung. Chris Jones. Wonderful performance for your boy. See, he sounds English, but he's actually born in Cardiff. Wonderful performance for your Welsh lads, mate.
It was fantastic, yes. Helped along the way by a fantastically inept and at times totally shambolic Wallabies performance. I've seen a number of matches over the many years I've been watching Eddie Jones' teams, but this ranks right up there with the worst. Why Japan would want to be interested in signing him, I'm not sure. I wouldn't buy a used car off him at the moment.
Well, it's just been all bluff and bluster and excuse-making, hasn't it, the whole time? And now chickens home roost, all of that kind of stuff, because it's all about results, and this is an absolute shellacking.
Yes, people probably now understand why England got rid of him. His coaching methods are from the dark ages, and when you look at the current game and what you have to do, you can't just hoof the ball up in the air and say chase it and believe you can somehow win a World Cup. And that is what he did with England, and this is what he's been doing with Australia, while talking a really, really good game. And that's the problem. We've heard it all before. For 20 years we've been hearing the same old jokes about turning battered old cars into Ferraris. Yeah, he doesn't do it anymore, and that's the problem. And along the way, he really affects players. I mean, Carter Gordon was pulled off at the last game. He got thrown onto this one. Poor bloke. He kicks a penalty for a 10-metre line out, dead. And you could see the whole team just deflate at that moment. But quite honestly, they weren't up for it anyway. There were times where Wales, who were really, really good. They're the first team through to the quarterfinals. They've scored a record win over Australia, a record number of points. And, they were holding people up in the tackle. And the Aussies weren't even trying to batter them. It was just inept. And it was a shadow of what used to be a fantastic rugby nation.
Chris, so many of the headlines will be around Eddie because that's the way journalism works these days. The clickbait headlines, and he'll give a couple of quip comments and all of that kind of thing. And But look, let's just first concentrate on Warren Gatland, who has had a disastrous tenure this time round with Wales. I mean, they couldn't beat an egg in a bowl, could they? But this win now, propelling them into the quarterfinals. What's this going to do for Welsh rugby?
Oh, it's just been a remarkable day today. The crowd, was dominated here in Lyon. It was fully red, and you had Warren Gatland's team going out there and playing a really clever game plan. Okay, you shouldn't really be conceding tries from a little inside pass, but the Wallabies did, and he picked them apart. It was a classic Warren, tactically astute, really well drilled team that was very, very fit and kept going right to the last minute. These teams don't drop off anymore 60 minutes when Warren's in charge. And that's been really important. He took them off to Switzerland. He gave them altitude training. He gave them warm weather training. And, they're reaping the rewards. And he has, one of his best appointments was to name Jack Morgan as captain. The guy scored the last try tonight in the match. He created the first try. He's been an absolute tower of strength. And he sums up, what is good about this Welsh team at the moment.
Chris, that was an absolutely titanic match between Ireland and South Africa. Anyone that has any doubts about the Irish, I don't know where they come from, mate. They're ticking every single box that they possibly can. They've beaten the Yarpies twice in a row. They've beaten us here in New Zealand. They won the Six Nations on a 16-match winning streak, and they proved they can physically match it against the biggest beast in world rugby.
Yeah, that normally you can rely on the Irish to be totally unreliable at a World Cup. They are changing perceptions, and boy, did they do it in such a really confident way. And you can go back to that New Zealand series and say that's when it turned. That's when they really started to believe they could do something at this World Cup. And they're doing it, and okay, you can point to the South Africans and the fact that they goal kicking was shoddy, and the Andre Pollard will be a motorbike back into the team. But the bottom line is, in other areas as well, the Irish just took it to them, and there was a big question: can they handle a 7-1 bench? And the answer is absolutely, and that leaves the South Africans with a big problem now. What do they do? Do they try and replicate what they've done before and just think it'll work because they'll have a proper kicker in the team? Or do they actually try and change something within their game plan? And that's going to be very difficult in the middle of a World Cup.
Yeah, look, I mean, they won't go away from what they know, and they'll probably, I don't know, agree or disagree with me, look at France and think, okay, without Dupont and without Intermac and the other injuries that they have, but especially those two guys, we don't know whether Dupont's going to make that quarterfinal. No, they'll probably be sitting there thinking, actually, this French side with those injuries is actually an okay quarterfinal opponent. Do you agree?
You've been reading those conspiracy theories again, haven't you? That is with the strongest sort of hint that came out of this. Is, of course, the South Africans will be devastated. But by the way, they now play a French team missing their regular halfbacks. And, if you're going to play France at any point, get it before Antoine's actually fit to come back. And there's a lot of debate at the moment. Will he make the quarterfinal? Will it be the semi-final? Whatever happens, he's going to be hurting. And he is a one-off, but it's still going to be affecting him in the way that he plays. You can't not take into every impact the thought, crikey, is this plate in my cheekbone going to actually hold? So the Springboks will probably think, if we have to take a hit, we've taken a hit against the Irish, but we do get to play the French now, and they are a little, and I say little bit vulnerable, because the guys who are second and third in the scrum half ratings may not be as good as Dupont, but boy, they're as good to get into anybody else's team. So, it's small gains, and honestly, the South Africans at the moment will take anything, because that was a big blow to the pride. They don't want to have to say, okay, we can win the World Cup by losing a pool match. They thought they were going to actually surge their way through this. But hey, take the French with that Dupont. I think they'll settle for that.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. Moan. I'm moaning sick all the time. Oh yeah, I got a moan on. Forward pass. It's an effing forward pass, mate. For God's sake, Rugby League. Get your starts with a sh and ends in an it together. The Broncos-Warriors game was just ridiculous, embarrassing for the referees, the lino, the bunkers, the entire administration of the sport. And this isn't about the Warriors losing. I mean, that was fair and square. Brisbane were better. That was as obvious as the stupid forward passes were. All that technology, more refs and reserves on the bench, linos that are actually there, right there on the sideline watching the ball being thrown forward and no one sees it. The Warriors were stiffed on at least 2 of those tries. It was blatant. So obvious. More obvious than a front-on hit from Payne Haas. No excuses, NRL. They're none at all. It's farcical. Forward passes are the scourge of your sport, and they have been for more than a couple of seasons now. Makes a complete mockery of all the officials because the technology is there. But you don't use it? Why? Because you won't use it? How ridiculous. The bunker can't rule on a forward pass? Well, why the hell not? It's just dumbass excuse-making load of bollocks. What a crock.
Devlin,
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
the platform.
2 best sides in the comp all year were Penrith and Brisbane. 2 teams that are meeting in the grand final, Penrith and Brisbane. The table doesn't lie. Getting the week off helps. Throw every cliche you want at it. The fact of the matter is both of these teams raised the bar and raised it again. And they both did, a virtual mirror image of themselves in the finals. Penrith smacked us, belted the Storm. Brisbane smacked the Storm, belted us. Brendan Bradford, CodeSports out of Australia. 2 best teams meet in the final, Brendan?
Yeah, absolutely. 2 best teams all year. You can't deny that. And I think of the Broncos and the Warriors, Broncos have got a much better chance of beating the Panthers. But yeah, for Warriors fans, it's still going to hurt. But definitely the 2 best sides in the comp. Penrith it was a training run on Friday night. It really wasn't against the Storm. Yeah, I felt like the Broncos made to work a little bit more, but it was very easy for Penrith.
Warriors outclassed, and there's no disgrace in that at all, but I think it's a good pointer, is it not, to what the squad needs to go up another level. I thought a couple of things. I thought that too static, too flat-footed on attack, that Brisbane had so many players in motion moving, plus those offloads. I mean, that's just the killer. You can't concede 25-plus offloads in a game.
Yeah, the offloads, the first half offloads it was just insane. Like, I've been saying all year the Broncos have been playing the most up-tempo, exciting rugby league, but that was one of the best halves I've ever seen from them, even though they conceded a few tries. Just the second phase play, and then on defence as well. Pat Carrigan just was seemingly everywhere. Jordan Ricky as well. And then they bring these guys off the bench and finally Pat Carrigan's going to get out of our faces for a little bit. And then they got 2 or 3 guys coming off the bench that are just charging up as well. So, look, it was obviously a plan to throw those outrageous offloads. I think they'd thrown something like 14 in the first half hour when they were averaging 9 per game this year. So it was obviously a plan, and it was beautiful coaching, brilliant execution as well. And look, that's about all you can say, really. Like, I think the Broncos were the better side. It felt like the Warriors were coming back into it in the second half. I guess we'll get to the forward pass, but look, you can't really deny that the best side won on the night.
Look, we're talking a lot about the forward pass. I've got a lot of commentary to play, and I've got some more comments on that. So we'll part that because we all know about that. Look, I mean, it didn't cost the Warriors the game. I'll just say that. We know that it probably ended the game at that stage. And it's such a weird anomaly in the rules. We've got rugby, Brendan, which I'm talking about it, okay. But we've got rugby, which is just so over-reffed, and the TMO interferes every 10 seconds and tells the ref, and that's one extreme of it. But how ridiculous is it when everyone can see a picture? You know how cricket used to be, that everybody could see the replay, but the umpire wasn't allowed to look at the screen to see he'd made a wrong decision, and just how insane that was, and eventually they changed it. The NRL, it's a blight on the game, but we've been saying this all year. They call it a line ball. It's goddamn forward, mate. We can all see it. And so just get the bunker to whisper in the ref's ear, go and have a look at it. That's all that needs to happen. Who wins the grand final then? And we'll probably talk to you later on in the week about this, but after watching Penrith and Brisbane both blow away their opposition in the prelim finals, it's a hell of an evenly matched contest, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. Just the last thing on that forward pass, it just felt like, okay, Warriors probably still would have lost, but at that point in the game, they'd stopped the offloads. It had become a grind. It felt like the Warriors were winning the kicking battle. And, like you say, the forward pass ended the game as a contest. The Warriors may have come back, maybe they wouldn't have, but they were getting the upper hand in the arm wrestle. They made it an arm wrestle. after just an open first half, and they weren't allowed to try and capitalise on that. Anyway, I'm still look. I would back the Broncos. I'm just still uncertain whether that kind of football is enough to beat the Panthers. They've got so much experience in these big games. They know how to grind out wins. Nathan Cleary's first half on Friday might have been the best half of football I've ever seen them play. He was just tremendous on attack and defence, and he's just on another level. And I just think that Penrith will be able to make this an arm wrestle. We'll be able to stop those offloads. Their forwards will match what the Broncos forwards dish up like the Warriors couldn't quite do. And I just think the Panthers have a little bit more experience, and we'll get this done next weekend.
Next!
I think we need to talk.
We need to talk.
Okay, I just said it.
We need to talk.
I just said it.
We need to talk.
And now you've got to tell me that
need
we're
to
gonna take it.
talk.
Just stop fighting here. Far out. You don't learn your lesson.
Sometimes you've got to stick up for yourself, Lachlan. 2 best teams in the competition? That's an easy answer to that question, isn't it? Penrith and Brisbane?
Yep.
Next!
Does the week off help then?
Yeah, I think it does for the most part. I don't know. I always go back and forth with this.
Well,
I don't know.
can say this year it helped, didn't it?
Well, this year it helped. It did, yeah. I think for the Warriors going from Sydney back to Auckland then over to Brisbane probably wouldn't help too much. So maybe if there was less travel, they would have done better, perhaps. I don't know.
And still yet another year at no one from 5 to 8 is actually going to...
Yeah, well, because... Well, and... I mean, the great thing when they went to that system was the original finals setup was kind of not boring, but there was only really 2 competitive fixtures. The other ones weren't really going to be that competitive because it was 1 versus 8 and 2nd versus 7th. But what it meant was that it was a little harder, well, no, should I say, a little easier for a 5 to 8 team to possibly sneak into the...
because you win that first game like the Warriors did against Melbourne that year.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, and then the next week you get a home final, and then you got to, yeah. So, but the new system,
I think the new system's brilliant.
Oh, I think it really rewards you if you're top 4.
That's the whole point, and it's meant to reward you because I love leagues that end at the end of the season, like the Premier League and so forth. But if you're going to have a playoff system, you have to, like baseball's done now, right? In terms of the wild cards, that the 2 best finishing teams get that free ride into the next round, and that really does count. The offloads that Zane was talking about there, and it was really obvious watching the Broncos on the weekend. So in the tackle, it's almost like it's part of the point of contact, Lachlan, that in you go into the hit and then you're turning your body straight away. So it's almost like I'm tackling your front on, but then you're wrestling around and all I'm seeing your back and your butt because you're actually turning around to offload. It's all in one movement. They obviously practice for this.
Yeah.
And then they unleashed it.
Yeah. They've been doing it all year. There's such an athletic team that they're able to do that as well. They can take the ball into contact and then all of a sudden they're getting their arms out and looking for the pass. I'm looking at just
the physicality, the bodies. It's what I saw when I watched Ireland versus South Africa yesterday. I looked at that Broncos side and thought they all looked bigger and more athletic and more well-built and more powerful and faster than the Warriors players, than their opposite. I mean, we've got a couple of guys who look like they're physical specimens. But who is it? Cobbo.
Oh, Selwyn Cobbo.
Good Lord. I mean... He's almost got an AFL player's body. He looks about 6'5".
Yeah, he's huge. He's really late. He's very similar to Greg Inglis, where he's so big, but he's so light on his feet. The thing is with this Broncos team is that even in the year when they got the wooden spoon, there were so many really good young players either coming up or making their debuts in that year or the year prior. Payne Haas, Flegler, Payne Haas debuted in 2018, but Payne Haas, Flegler, Pat Carrigan, Katoni Staggs, Herbie Farnworth made his debut in 2020 when we were wooden spooners as well. Cobbo a year later, I'm pretty sure. Might have been
Pass the ball, Farnworth, you greedy sod, mate.
Jordan Ricky as well. So
bombed a try he did on the weekend.
Yeah, so did Ricky actually. So even when we were at the lowest ebb in the club's history, there was still this great crop of young players that as long as you could get some older heads around them, the future's going to be bright. So they're all just so brilliant at what they do, position by position. I don't think, maybe I'm biased, I don't think Penrith, position by position, if you go through 1 through 13 of their best team, have the natural talent that those Broncos players have. They're all still so young, so this team's going to be around for a long time as well.
Okay, well, I'm about to ask you about that. Before we do, though, get on to who should win the grand final and who should Warriors fans support, Big Bob on the text. I'll be surprised if the Wars do this well next season. I think most of the comm didn't take them serious and it was too late. Oh, I see. They're just... This glass is so half empty. It's even half empty. Mate, until the Eels front up, stand up, and actually do something in the competition, you have got to shut up. That's it.
Okay.
With all the love in the world, you've got nothing, mate.
Being devil's advocate,
you've got nothing.
The Eels last year did more than what the Warriors did this year because they made the grand final.
I can't remember 2 years ago, mate.
Last year. And also, to be fair to Big Bob, he's semi-right where... I don't know if the Warriors will be as good because there are a number of teams in the NRL who should have been in the top 8 or been...
I'm just looking at the points table right now, mate.
Well, I know, but I mean, okay, the Roosters should have probably performed better. The Eels, the Cowboys.
Didn't.
I'd argue the Titans had a better team.
Great team.
The Sharks probably should have... The Rabbitohs.
Can't see them all, mate. I can't see them.
Well, be careful. You won't, I don't know if you won't be saying that this time next year.
Well, let's just wait and see, shall we? Let's look at the Warriors season then.
Yeah.
How magnificent is magnificent?
Oh, very magnificent. 6 wins last year.
16
wins this year. And then 1 in the finals. That's brilliant
17,
season.
I think it was, wasn't it?
17 in total.
Was it 17 or was it 17 in the points?
No, because they lost their last game.
Ah, okay. Well, then, how good is that?
No, it's brilliant.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Well, we were ripping into them last year about with things that Stacey Jones was saying in the press conferences.
Yep.
No pride for the jersey, giving
All of
up,
that, yep.
bad habits, and just and credit to the front office and some of the work they've done. But it solely for me sits purely on the shoulder, or not purely, but a lot of the turnaround sits on the shoulders of Andrew Webster.
Got to.
And the players have done really well, and they've bought into him, and their attitudes have clearly changed, and they got rid of a lot of those bad attitudes that they talked about, because Andrew Webster told us that last year. They got rid of those players. But Andrew Webster has been an absolute revelation.
Yeah, totally.
And there is no way in hell that they should let anything happen in regards to him potentially leaving the club in the next couple of years.
So, after giving them a big spray last year, Mark Robinson, the owner, and also Cameron George, well, you got to take your hat off and just say well done to you lads, because you did get the recipe right this year. So, who should Warriors fans now support in the grand final? I'll tell you, the Brisbane Broncos. I'm a hundy behind the Brisbane Broncos.
Good.
2 reasons. 1, Jerome Luai. Now, I don't actually, Luai's one of those, you've got to find somebody in sport that you and hate's a bad word, because I don't hate anybody, right? I mean, when I say I hate the Scousers because I'm talking in sporting terms of hate. But everything about Luai, I don't mind the cigars and the flash winning the grand final and sticking it to them and saying you're my daddy and all that, call me daddy. But it was just the Instagram post after the Origin, when you played like such a bitch, when you just got ramrodded. And then to have that one where you sit in the post saying, you guys all got to work tomorrow, and giving it the finger to all the fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, pal. So there's that reason. But the other reason is because if the Warriors have to lose to anybody, I'd rather lose to the team that's the best in the comp and wins the comp.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's the reason why I'm backing Broncos this weekend. Fair enough. I suppose Penrith are now at that team where, as much as I love the Clearys, they're now Man City. They're Bayern Munich.
Well, they're the new Melbourne Storm.
Yeah, once you've won it too many times, it's kind of like, I would like another team to win. So I'm bringing the Devlin jinx full tit onto your Broncos this weekend. Yeah, that's the last thing that anyone wants, isn't it? Eddie Jones, mate. So how's this? You sign a 5-year deal. I just find this so icky. And then while you're at the World Cup, you do a Zoom call with another country about a job with them. And then, of course, your team crashes out like they did against Wales today, and you still got your hand up saying, I want to keep this. It's just, yeah. Normally this happens with Eddie Jones kind of in the 2nd or 3rd year. Normally the divorce, there's a couple of happy years of the marriage before it all crumbles and the lawyers get called in. Brett McKay, the Raw out of Canberra, trying to unravel it all for us. Just knowing that you've got a dinner date with Eddie Jones, and behind your back, Brett, he's been talking to your greatest media rival. Ooh, there's just something icky about that Japanese story, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, mate. It's a story that won't go away. And even this morning, our time after the game in Lyon last night, local time, he was asked straight out about the Japan story and still wouldn't give a particularly straight answer on that. And the thing about this is that what people will
remember in all this is that he's been dismissive. He called it gossip and BS when I was first raised with him last week, and I put it to you that that story on the weekend maybe doesn't come out or doesn't get looked into further if he'd have given a straight answer in the first place. But because he tried to dismiss it, and because the journos knew that there was actually something to it, they dug a bit further. And, suddenly you hear that, there's a process in play and there's a short list and he's on it and he interviewed, via Zoom before a warm-up game and has made, basically an offer to even have the next meeting in person. Well, then there's more than a whiff of smoke to this now. Even if half the facts that were presented in that story are true, there's still more than a whiff of smoke about this. And as I say again, he was given the chance post-match to address it, and he tried to go down the deflective angle and tried to, reaffirm his commitment, but still wouldn't exactly say, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here next year. So it's not a great look. It's not a very good look at all. And, Rugby Australia have sort of put out a statement. Phil Ward basically said, all I can do is take someone on their word. And I've heard nothing any different. So we believe he will be here next year. And to a degree, that's all he can say. Until he actually gets a chance to sit down with Eddie and go, what the hell's going on with this Japan story? That is all he can say. But in the context of how they played this morning, our time, and how they will now almost certainly bow out of the World Cup before the quarterfinal stage, none of this is a particularly good look for Eddie Jones or for Rugby Australia for that matter. The bloke that they've backed for 5 years could actually be angling for the exit already.
Look, he did what he, in the press conference this morning, what he always does. He gets angry and he picks on a certain journalist or a certain line of questioning and he tries the deflection. And I think, we're all old enough and ugly enough now to know what he's doing, what the routine is. And it's okay when the team might be playing okay or there's still a bit of hope. But as you say, when you add it up to, and I've been saying, and no disrespect to you, mate, but I've been saying that this is the worst Australian side that I've ever seen. Now, I can't go back to the 1970s when that team apparently was really awful, but you just demand and expect better. And that was a rabble today is what it was. That was embarrassing for Australian rugby in every single aspect. You're meant to be hosting the next Rugby World Cup. This was the easiest group to get out of. Let's not forget that. So you've got to put all of that on the table as well, Eddie, and answer that.
Yeah, and it's a valid concern. It's a valid line of questioning, and it's a valid criticism that's going to come up a lot this week. It's come up a lot already today. I've got no doubt about that. Even having just scanned through social media, online comments in the last hour or two, there is a lot of questions like that all need addressing. As to when that happens and how that will happen remains to be seen. But there are certainly questions to be asked. And it was interesting. I saw sort of a new line of commentary over the weekend, and it was particularly in reaction to the Japan story that basically said, what are journalists doing? Why the hell are they dropping that on the day before a game? But then also saying, where are the stories actually backing the players, and why is everything about Eddie Jones? Well, everything's about Eddie Jones because he makes it about himself.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
He absolutely makes it about himself, and he does that to shield the players. It's coaching 101. He takes all the barbs himself so that there's no pressure on the players. And the result, unfortunately, was that second half that we saw this morning where they were just completely blown away on the park and they did not look like a team that knew how to get out of trouble. And they didn't know how to get out of trouble because they didn't have any experience around there. They didn't have any calming heads. They didn't have anyone on the field to say, guys, let's just kick for the corner. Let's go to set piece. Let's try and win the ball back. And let's try and do it that way. They didn't have the guiding lights, if you like, out on the field. And he went down the road, and Hamish McLennan, the Rugby Australia chairman, has backed him to the hilt in this, saying that the rebuild was needed. Why rebuild was needed in a World Cup year, I'll never know. But the rebuild was needed, and they needed to go with the back young players. Well, the result of that is that the young players don't know what they're doing, and the experience that they've got from this World Cup, that's going to take some getting over.
Yeah.
Because right at the moment, those young guys now have exactly the same baggage that McLennan and Jones were trying to say they were trying to get rid of by not picking the likes of Quade Cooper and not picking Michael Hooper and whoever else they left out. So this is you can say what you like about the playing stock and the talent base and all that, but this is absolutely a result of a dereliction of planning and of a coaching approach and a game plan approach to this tournament with the wrong players.
The Tight Five.
5 serious sporting topics, roughly a minute or so on each. Win the bell. We move on to the next topic. So much to talk about. Eddie Jones, mate. Already talking with Japan prior to the World Cup. That's like kind of sort of sending a few DMs on Instagram before you're broken up. Hannah Wilkinson. Is Hannah's career with the Football Ferns over after a disgraceful red card against Chile on the weekend? How the hell did the Silver Ferns lose to England E? Okay, England D. All right. England C. Not a single member of the Roses World Championship squad are here in New Zealand, and we still lost that game. Ireland, South Africa. Can the All Blacks get up to that level? And the forward pass, let's talk about that because everyone else is.
It's going to be the start of a rule change. We won't see it ever again. We can't see these howlers happening in our game because we keep saying, what if it cost the side a grand final? What if it happened? Well, it didn't cost the Warriors their game because they made a line break, the Broncos, but it is a howler. I don't know why the bunker just can't say straight away, mate, that's way forward, bring it back. It's a blight in our game.
Thank you, MG. That's the voice of Mark Geyer talking there. And everyone's saying the same thing, Lachlan. And as a Broncos fan, look, I got to acknowledge that, yes, you guys were good. Yes, you were better than us. Yes, you would have won the game anyway.
Well, you just answered it.
Once I'm over all of that, though, it's... There's nothing worse than when you see something that is so clearly wrong, and be it in life, be it in sport, be it whatever it is, and you're looking at it going, how can they not do something immediately to change this when it is so obvious? That's what gets me. It's like Gerald Sutton's shorts, mate. Come on. I mean, at least put a pair of teenage boys' shorts on. To wear an 8-year-old kid's pair of shorts, you know when you're actually running out onto the field that those shorts, Jared or Gerald, whatever your name is, are too small. They're too tight, mate. Do you have to wear a pair of underpants masquerading as shorts? That aside, do you think the pressure that he puts on himself in those parts of the body with shorts that tight are affecting his vision and his brain, and he can't see a forward pass?
You're asking me about 2 or 3 different questions. I would think so, because I certainly wouldn't be comfortable in those shorts out in front of 52,500 people.
And the millions watching on TV.
So I'd just be trying to pull them down just to make sure that no one can actually see how white my thighs are.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, to the important stuff.
Yes.
Look, one... why can't they change it right away? There's some weird, annoying politics stuff where they wouldn't be able to change a rule this late on in the season and so soon after the grand final.
Landis has done it before, mate.
Well, I know he has, but they won't do it because there's always someone in a chair who's going to disagree with it being changed so quick. Look, the thing is, this happens all the time. These forward passes get missed so much in rugby league. It is a shame that it happened in such a big game. For any Warriors fans out there suggesting that impacted the result, stop it.
Yeah, stop it.
It didn't.
Stop it. No,
the Broncos were by far the better team.
Yeah, no question.
And even if to start that second half of those first 10 minutes, it was a bit more even than, say, the first half ended, it wasn't as if the Warriors were pounding the Broncos line and looking like they were scoring on a number of occasions.
But you must accept, though, that did end the game. There was no comeback after that.
Yeah, I think, because they put them up by 3 converted tries. Yeah. And look, when it was awarded, I didn't feel right. I was with a big group of friends and who all supported the Warriors, and I just sat there and said, that shouldn't be given, and I don't feel right. But I don't know. Look, it doesn't impact. I think the saving grace is it didn't impact the result of the game.
Exactly right. But it is something that they have to deal with, as do New Zealand football.
Wilkinson remonstrating with the referee's assistant on the far side. The referee calling a halt to proceedings, and I think this is a red card for Hannah Wilkinson.
A straight red card.
Hannah Wilkinson here she's reached out and she's made contact with the referee's assistant.
Andrew Duhess there with the call. Now, this wasn't on Sky Sport, so, for all your support of women's football, Sky Sport, why aren't these matches been live? One of them's behind closed doors, but that should have been live. Instead, New Zealand football yesterday all over Twitter was saying jump on FIFA Plus. Well, you jump on FIFA Plus and you can't get any vision of it because it's ring-fenced, of course, and you need a VPN connection or something.
That's some great support for your women's football there, Sky. Good job.
Hannah Wilkinson can just count herself very lucky she didn't do this at the World Cup, because she would have been the human headline forever if she did. No excuse for it at all. Complete brain fade. And when making contact, she swung her arm around backwards and whacked the assistant referee.
Yeah. So it was totally purposeful. There's no way she can say that it was an accident.
No.
And even if she says, heat of the moment, whatnot, you just don't do
I haven't heard any apology or seen any apology from her straight away. She should be apologising to her teammates, to the country, to the football fans, to the sport. It's a disgraceful act. It's something that you never really see a lot in women's sport.
No, you don't.
I was quite amazed when I saw it, because this is a woman that's played over 100 games for her country, so she obviously knows better. Just obviously a brain fade. And, I was going to say forgive her for a brain fade. No, you can't be forgiven for that. It's probably the end of her career, and it's a real sad way to end the career.
Oh, yeah, that's a bit...
Well, she's got a 14 or 15 game ban, they reckon.
I think, yeah.
Which means she's not going to be at the Olympics next year, which
Probably
means her career's gone.
I'll say this. You actually made a good point there, that one thing that was said during the Women's World Cup by a lot of people who we talked to on the show, and I talked to as well, they loved the fact that there wasn't the same theatrics in women's football as men's football. You had the diving and whatnot, and there wasn't that same, and the time wasting wasn't as bad.
Or the assaults on the officials.
Yeah, and then this kind of pegs it back, and you feel like you're going, okay, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back now. So
it's a shameful incident, and such a shame that it happened. Eddie Jones talking with Japan prior to the World Cup. As I said earlier, this is like you sending DM Instagram messages before you break up. What the hell are you doing, mate? Well, it's just so untidy, and it's just so icky, and it's also it says everything about you as a person. If I was a Wallabies fan, I don't want you coaching anymore. If this is true, if you've been having private conversations before the tournament, he signed on in Australia for 5 years, Lachlan, with a record deal.
Yeah, apparently, because he had a job interview over Zoom for the head coaching position, reportedly, on August 25th, when he and the Wallabies were in Paris, 2 days out from their warm-up against France.
Now, he can make up every excuse or reason for this. Oh, they approached me. So what? Yeah. You're at a World Cup committed to Australia, mate. You say thank you very much, but no thank you is what you do. All of the affection I've had for Eddie Jones, mate, in his press conferences and his great audio, and I just think, on this occasion, you're a dick, mate. As for Wales thumping Australia out of the World Cup, there's a mathematical possibility they could stay. It's a bit like Scotland's mathematical possibility they could make the quarterfinals. Reality is neither of those things are going to happen. This is the worst Wallaby side I've ever seen. Ever.
Agreed.
Now, I wasn't around in the 1970s when they lost to Tonga in 1973 and they got beaten about 80 or 90 points by the All Blacks, I think, way back then. I mean, my memory of the Wallabies goes into the kind of the later 70s when Greg Cornelsen scored 4 tries at Eden Park, and they got quite good after that. This lot are a rabble, mate. They were embarrassing. They were just embarrassing today.
Yeah, they were. And the one of the excuses thrown out there is that this is such a young team that Eddie's building up to 2027 and he's taking them over. But at the end of the day, it's also you can look at the players they didn't take, Michael Hooper or Bernard Foley or whoever else that they left out of the team that typically might have made it. I don't think they would have done any better. This is it's the lowest ebb of Australian rugby.
It is, yeah.
And it just keeps getting lower and lower. And you just sit there and wonder, well, when are we going to get to the very lowest?
Well, Wales aren't a good side.
To be fair, I mean, they
played really well.
They did play really well. I mean, they're a little bit like England. We're at this tournament. I've sat here and really criticised Wales, and I've just thought, well, they're getting results.
And they're going to get either England or Argentina, because Argentina, unfortunately, not for Argentina itself, but I was hoping Manu Samoa would get up in that game, and they didn't. And Tonga are just so far behind the 8 ball in this. And look, we were talking about this last week, when you read Charles Piutau's comments about, they don't have any training kit. They were playing with substitute balls until last week, practicing, because they didn't have the proper equipment or gear. I mean, come on, World Rugby. Before you start talking about 24 teams in your bloody dreams, start resourcing these ones.
Yeah, and actually make sure that the 20 teams at the tournament, there's an element of competition.
At least are competitive. In the past 2 weekends, is this the best evidence yet that there are golfing gods, that they do exist? They smiled on Ryan Fox last week. They piled on him this week, the poor bugger. He wins at Wentworth playing the best back nine in his life, Lachlan, and then he doesn't make the cut.
Yeah.
I've been messaging him, of course. I said, dude, he just said, I don't know. You know, he said, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the golfing gods. LBP with TMG, that's Twisel's Matt Gunn. He is positive every single Monday, joins the show. And this time, talking about the Warriors season. Yeah, we can be really positive about that. Why is no one going to watch women's rugby? And I know that we're not allowed to talk about this out loud, but the Black Ferns 15 played on the weekend, and once again, there is no crowd. Plus, also, the demise of his Wallabies. Let's be positive. Okay, let's be positive. Dave Rennie's laughing. That's one positive we can take out of that, Matt.
Dave Rennie is absolutely loving life. And I was just thinking to myself this morning, reading through some of the reaction, which isn't good, that Dave Rennie's 38% winning record over his 3 years looks pretty good now, doesn't it? Looks solid now. Against our one game in 8, and that being against Georgia that we've won this year under Eddie Jones. I mean, it couldn't get any worse, could it?
Well, we've got a couple of other things to talk about. I want to actually mention the fact that New Zealand Rugby have now invested into a Black Ferns 15, just like the All Blacks 15. Another big waste of absolute money in terms of no one turns up, nobody cares, there's no interest in it, but you're ticking woke boxes and you're fulfilling.
They're ticking boxes. They're ticking boxes. I mean, there was a bit of momentum. There was a bit of momentum for the game, but it didn't continue, did it? And unfortunately, for whatever reason that is, Martin, it didn't.
No.
The World Cup was good.
Yeah.
Everyone jumped on board. You know, they had some good crowds, but it just stopped. It stopped. People didn't continue to go.
What it's done is it's just gone back to what it was, and it's the same with New Zealand women's football. I mean, and again, you know, this is no criticism. It's just a reality. Out of nowhere, you've got this huge big spike of interest because it's a World Cup. What you've actually got to do as an administration is figure out why that has happened, who is watching, how to get those same people back watching your domestic product. And none of these questions were answered at the time, and none of them are still being answered. And that's why we're now back to where we were a year ago, which is with a sport, which is an amateur sport, trying to be a professional sport. But unfortunately, no one's coming into the shop to buy the jeans, mate. So how long do you keep the shop open?
Well, you can't continue to hold stock if no one wants to pay for it. It doesn't work that way.
No.
The people that you bought it from want their money. You give them money. You've got no money. Then you have to go broke and sell them cheap. Look, unfortunately, or fortunately, or whatever it is, people don't necessarily want to fill stadiums out for these women's games at the moment. Now, I'm not trying to be sexist here. I've said before, there's enough women in the world to sell out women's sports, but it doesn't happen. Now, for whatever reason that is, and I'll tell you what, the other thing I think probably plays a bit of a role in it is we're all told all the time how good it is and how much we should support it. And I think that's the wrong way to go about it. It's almost a shaming tactic. You should go along and watch them because they deserve as much money as everyone else. The problem is just like the jean shop or the coffee shop, if there's no customers, unfortunately, whether or not you deserve to get paid, you won't get paid. And until it can be turned around and it becomes a real thing on its own, I'm a bit sick of being told I should be interested.
That's exactly. I couldn't say it any better.
Unfortunately, I'm not that interested because I'm being told I should be. And it doesn't work.
Let's turn our attention finally to the forward pass. And I've been harping on about this all season, mate. It is the scourge of the NRL. No, it didn't cost the Warriors. Yes, it ended the game, those two ridiculous forward passes for that try that made it 30-12. But the NRL, what are you bozos up to? You know, this is the worst use of technology since football in the 2010 World Cup in South Africa saw an England goal go 5 feet over the goal line and spin and bounce out again, but they had no goal line technology and the ref wasn't aware of it, and so they didn't actually tell him. But those forward passes, you've got a lino standing there. You've got the guy in the tightest pair of kids' shorts that has ever refereed a game. Jared Sutton doesn't see it. The bunker knows it. The big screen knows it. Everyone knows it, but no one's allowed to say so. How silly is it?
They have doctors now watching footage, and they'll get a player off the ground if they deem it worthy minutes after a head injury clash or an incident. And yet you can have a try like this scored, which as soon as it was thrown, You knew it was forward.
Oh.
But it can't be reviewed. They can't call back a forward pass. And not only that, there were two of them. And Penrith scored one off a forward pass the other night too. No, the Warriors probably weren't good enough to win. But at the time that try was scored, it was 24-12, Martin. The Warriors, you must remember, had missed 3 conversion attempts or 3 kicks. So it could have been 24-18 and it could have been the difference. That's the problem I have. Not that it was in the end, because the Warriors weren't up to the task. But in moments like that on a big stage, it's embarrassing to not be able to rule on it properly. And for all the things that they go and look at, if there's an incident on the try line, they'll often go back for 2 or 3 phases before the actual try and check it out. But you can't pick up a forward pass like that. I think it's crazy.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
Unbelievable! Incredible!
The Platform.